You ever notice how life has this funny way of warning you before it hits you? Not with lightning, not with thunder, no. It whispers. It gives you silence right before the storm, peace so thick you almost believe you're safe. And that's the trick, isn't it? The calm makes you careless. You start thinking you've made it through the worst. You start smiling again, breathing again. You start to think the darkness is done with you. But then, something starts shifting in the air. The kind of shift you can't see, but you feel it crawling across your skin. Like the world's holding its breath, waiting to see how much more you can take. Everyone's afraid of breaking. They treat it like the end of the story, like the credits start rolling the moment things fall apart. But that's the lie, isn't it? The beautiful little illusion that keeps people chained to comfort. Breaking isn't destruction, it's transformation, wearing a cruel mask. It's not the end, it's the surgery before the rebirth. But people don't like surgery, they like pretending they're fine. They'll keep patching the cracks, keep smiling through the pain, just so they don't have to admit something inside them is rotting. Because once you admit that, you have to do something about it. And doing something means bleeding for it. You see, everything in this world that grows has to break first. Seeds split open before they bloom. Bones crack before they heal stronger. Hearts shatter before they learn to love differently. But humans want to grow without pain, change without chaos, evolve without loss. They want transformation that doesn't demand a sacrifice. The problem is, life doesn't trade like that. Life takes before it gives. It breaks before it builds. And when that moment comes, when everything you thought was solid starts collapsing, you start to understand what you were made of all along. Not the version you post, not the smile you wear for people who don't even notice, but the real thing underneath. The raw, shaking, ugly truth of you. Breaking strips away the lies. That's what makes it so terrifying. Because when the cracks appear, you can't pretend anymore. You can't blame luck or timing or anyone else. You have to look at yourself and see the truth that's been hiding beneath your armor. And that truth, it's not always pretty. It shows you the fear you ignored, the weakness you denied, the pain you buried so deep you forgot it existed. Breaking doesn't destroy you. It introduces you to yourself. The parts you've neglected, the shadows you refuse to face. It forces you to meet the version of you that's been quietly waiting beneath all the pretending. You'll scream, of course. You'll think it's unfair. You'll curse everything and everyone. That's what people do when the illusion burns, because they thought they were safe in their little worlds, built of convenience and denial. But safety is just a story you tell yourself to avoid seeing how fragile you really are. The truth is, you were always one blow away from collapse. And that blow, whether it comes through betrayal, loss, failure, or silence, doesn't arrive to ruin you. It arrives to reveal you. Because the you that survives the breaking isn't the same one who started. Something changes, something permanent. You stop needing validation. You stop begging to be seen. You stop chasing the idea of control, and you start learning to exist in chaos without losing yourself. Breaking bends you, but it also teaches you to move differently. It forces you to rebuild with intention. When the pieces of your life hit the floor, you get to decide which ones to pick back up. You realize some parts weren't worth keeping. Some dreams were too small. Some people were never really with you. They were just comfortable while you were whole. When you break, you see everything clearly for the first time. And clarity hurts, but it also heals. Because it gives you the freedom to start again without pretending, without masks, without apologies. just the truth. You'll notice something strange too. After the breaking, things that used to matter don't anymore. The noise fades, the opinions, the pressure, the expectations, they all shrink. You stop chasing perfection because you finally understand it doesn't exist. You start chasing peace instead, real peace. The kind that doesn't depend on anyone's approval or circumstances lining up. Because after you've been broken, you stop living for survival. You start living for purpose. And purpose doesn't come from comfort. It comes from collapse. It comes from standing in the ashes and realizing you're still breathing, still capable, still alive. That's when transformation begins. Breaking is nature's way of rewriting you. You thought you were finished, but you were only a draft. Every crack, every scar, every bruise is just life carving out the version of you that can handle what's next. The world doesn't reward those who stay untouched. It crowns those who rise from their own ruins. And maybe that's the secret. Maybe the breaking isn't punishment. Maybe it's the invitation. Because something has to die before something greater can live. Pain is the language of awakening, though no one wants to admit it. Everyone craves comfort, ease, pleasure, but those things never teach you anything real. Pain does. Pain is the teacher no one asks for, but everyone meets. It's the moment life stops speaking in whispers and starts screaming the truth in your face. You don't forget pain. It carves itself into your memory, into your body, into your decisions. And that's the point. Pain changes the way you see everything. It makes you look at yourself, not the version you've dressed up for the world, but the one trembling underneath. You can fake a smile, fake confidence, fake peace, but pain rips the mask clean off. You think you're awake, but you're not. You're scrolling, working, laughing, existing, not living. Pain is what shakes you from that trance. It grabs you by the throat and says, look. And when you look, really look, you realize how much of your life was built on sleepwalking, on routines that numbed you, on people who drained you, on dreams that were never yours to begin with. Pain wakes you up from the illusion of control. It reminds you that everything can change, and that nothing you hold is guaranteed to stay. It's cruel, but it's honest. And honesty, especially the kind that hurts, is the only thing that can make you alive again. The strange thing about pain is that it doesn't come when you're ready. It comes when you're comfortable. It sneaks in when you start thinking you've got things figured out. And it doesn't knock, it kicks the door open, because comfort is the enemy of growth. You stop questioning, you stop feeling, you stop pushing forward. So pain comes as a wake-up call, a violent, uninvited reminder that there's still more for you to become. But here's the catch. Most people don't listen. They drown it out. They run from it. They cover it with distractions, with noise, with fake happiness. And the more they run, the louder it gets. Because pain doesn't go away. When ignored, it multiplies. People like to say time heals all wounds. That's a lie told by those who never face their pain head on. Time doesn't heal. Awareness does. Reflection does. The decision to face what broke you does. Because pain is a messenger, not a punishment. It shows up with lessons written in blood and silence. It tells you what you need to release, what you need to change, what you need to become. But you can't hear that message if you're too busy pretending you're fine. The bravest thing you can do is sit with it. Listen to it. Let it show you the parts of yourself you've been afraid to meet. The irony is, pain doesn't destroy you, it reveals you. You don't know who you are until you've suffered. You don't know your strength until it's tested. You don't know your faith until it's shaken. Pain strips away the lies you told yourself about what you could handle, what you needed, who you were. It pushes you to the edge of everything you thought you knew and dares you to jump anyway. And when you do, when you stop fighting it and start learning from it, that's when awakening begins. That's when you start seeing the patterns, the illusions, the fake comfort you built to keep yourself safe from truth. Pain has this strange way of making you grateful later. Not at first. At first it feels unbearable, unfair, endless. But then one day, you realize it made you sharper. It made you quieter. It made you see through things that used to fool you. The same pain that almost killed you becomes the reason you can finally live differently. You start to see that every wound was a doorway, not a grave. Every heartbreak was a filter. Every loss was direction disguised as chaos. Pain rewired your mind to spot what's real, to feel what's real. And that's awakening the ability to live with your eyes open in a world built on lies. But awakening doesn't come cheap. It demands everything. It asks you to trade comfort for truth, illusion for clarity, safety for freedom. Most people won't pay that price. They'll cling to their cages because they're familiar. But if you ever choose to listen to pain instead of running from it, it will teach you more than any success, any pleasure, any victory ever could. It will teach you how to see, how to breathe through the fire instead of escaping it, how to stand in the middle of chaos and feel peace anyway. That's what pain does. It strips you bare until all that's left is awareness, sharp, uncomfortable, beautiful awareness. Comfort hides weakness. Chaos reveals strength. It's always been that way. People love to think they're strong when everything's calm, when their plans go right, when the world behaves the way they expect it to. But that's not strength. That's convenience. Real strength doesn't show up when life is kind. It comes crawling out when everything collapses. It's buried deep inside the parts of you that haven't been tested yet, waiting for chaos to come knocking. And chaos always comes. It doesn't care about your timing, your peace, your plans. It comes to see what you're made of. And that's when you find out if the version of you you've been pretending to be can actually survive the fire. Comfort fools you. It wraps itself around you like a warm blanket and whispers that you're safe, that you're capable, that you're ready. But comfort is a liar. It hides your fragility under a soft illusion. It gives you confidence built on stillness, not on struggle. And when the chaos arrives, that false confidence cracks. You see it in people who've never been hurt, never failed, never faced rejection. They speak loudly until life speaks back. Then their voices shake. Their plans crumble. Their masks fall off. Because comfort didn't prepare them, it protected them. It made them soft in places they should have been steel. Chaos doesn't ask if you're ready. It throws you into the deep end and waits to see if you'll sink or swim. It strips away your excuses, your pride, your habits, and leaves you with raw instinct. And that's where strength lives, in instinct. In the split-second decisions you make when everything familiar disappears. In the breath you take when you're surrounded by fear, but you move anyway. Chaos doesn't care about what you say you believe. It exposes what you actually believe. You can't fake resilience in the middle of a storm. You either bend or you break. And bending isn't weakness. It's wisdom. The tree that refuses to move in the wind is the first to snap. Everyone says they want peace, but they forget what peace costs. You can't have true peace without first surviving chaos, because peace that hasn't been tested isn't peace, it's ignorance. Chaos is what builds the kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen or proven. The kind of strength that doesn't panic when everything falls apart because it's been there before. You can't develop that in a world of comfort. Comfort gives you ease, but chaos gives you depth. It digs into your soul and pulls out everything you didn't know was there. It shows you your limits, and then it laughs as it pushes you past them. That's where transformation lives, not in safety, but in surrender. When chaos hits, most people pray for escape. But the truth is, chaos is the only thing that ever tells the truth. It doesn't lie to you, it doesn't flatter you. It shows you what you depend on, who you really are, what you can actually endure. It reveals the cracks in your foundation, and while it hurts to see them, it's the only way to fix them. Comfort would have let you stay fragile forever. Chaos doesn't. It doesn't tolerate weakness, hiding behind routine. It pulls you apart so you can rebuild stronger. The thing about strength is, it doesn't feel like strength when it's growing. It feels like breaking. It feels like confusion. It feels like every part of you is screaming to stop. That's why people mistake strength for suffering. But that suffering, that shaking, that burning is the process. It's you being remade from the inside out. Chaos is the sculptor and pain is the chisel. Every hit, every crack, every moment you think you can't go on is carving you into something more real, more grounded, more unshakable. And when it's all over, when the dust finally settles, you'll notice something. The things that used to scare you don't anymore. The people who used to control you can't. The uncertainty that once paralyzed you becomes fuel. You move differently. You speak differently. You carry silence like a weapon. That's the mark of someone who's been through chaos and didn't run. Someone who stood there, shaking, but didn't fall. Because strength isn't the absence of fear, it's the decision to keep walking through it. Comfort will tell you it's protecting you, but it's only keeping you from discovering yourself. Chaos is the mirror that shows you who you are without filters, without pretense. The reflection might terrify you at first, but eventually, you'll recognize it. You'll realize that the only way to know your own power is to let the world try to take it away and fail. The storm doesn't come to punish, it comes to purify. That's the part no one understands until it's too late. They see destruction, they see loss, they see chaos and think, asterisk, why me? Asterisk. But storms don't pick favorites. They come for anything that's built on weakness, anything that's standing on shaky ground. The storm isn't your enemy, it's the truth in motion. It doesn't hate you, it's cleansing you, stripping away everything you built that wasn't real, everything you clung to just to avoid being honest with yourself. Because the truth is, we hold on to too much. People, ideas, routines, illusions. And sometimes, life has to send the storm to take it all down, because you wouldn't let go yourself. You ever notice how calm everything feels right before it all falls apart? That eerie stillness, that false peace. That's not coincidence, that's warning. That's the storm, giving you one last chance to wake up before it breaks everything you refuse to change. People think storms ruin their lives, but maybe the ruin was already there, buried under fake smiles and forced normalcy. The storm just brings it to the surface. You call it a disaster. The universe calls it a detox. You see, the storm doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your alignment. If something in your life doesn't belong anymore, if it's blocking your growth, draining your purpose, poisoning your peace, the storm will remove it. You won't understand it while it's happening, because all you'll see is loss. You'll think everything's being taken from you, but what's really happening is subtraction with purpose. The storm isn't there to punish you. It's trying to save you from the things that were quietly destroying you. But people rarely see it that way. They cry over what's gone, instead of realizing what's being made possible in the space it left behind. And it hurts. Of course it hurts. Cleansing always hurts. The storm doesn't ask for your permission before it tears through your world. It just arrives, uninvited, and starts taking what can't survive where you're going next. That's the thing about purification. It's not gentle. It doesn't whisper. It screams. It tears. It forces you to face the wreckage of your own resistance. Because deep down, you knew some of it needed to go. You just didn't have the courage to let it go yourself. So the storm did what you wouldn't. The irony is that when the storm hits, we cling to the very things that are meant to be carried away. We fight the current, grabbing at broken pieces, begging them to stay. We think the storm is cruel because it doesn't let us keep what feels safe. But safety and stagnation look very similar when you're afraid to grow. The storm knows that. It knows you can't move forward with dead weight tied around your soul. So it rips it away, even when you scream, even when you bleed. Because the storm's job isn't to comfort you, it's to cleanse you. And when it's over, when the wind stops howling and the dust begins to settle, you start to see differently. The things that fell apart weren't meant to last. The people who left weren't meant to stay. The plans that failed weren't meant to succeed. You realize that everything that was stripped away was only hiding what you were supposed to find. The storm wasn't there to punish you. It was revealing what was true beneath all the pretending. It was washing away the versions of you that were built from fear, expectation, and survival. It was leaving behind something cleaner, something real. But here's the part most people miss. The purification doesn't just happen outside you. It happens in times you. The storm isn't just weather, it's reflection. It shakes your spirit, floods your emotions, forces you to confront what you've been avoiding. It shows you what you really believe when everything stable disappears. Do you trust yourself or only your comfort? Do you have faith in what you can't see or only what you can control? The storm answers those questions for you. It breaks your illusions until the only thing left standing is your truth. And truth doesn't need walls to protect it. The beauty of it all is that once the storm is gone, you realize it, left you lighter, stronger, cleaner. The pieces that survived weren't damaged, they were refined. The storm burned away everything fake and left behind the core of who you actually are. And that's how you know it wasn't punishment. Punishment leaves you empty. Purification leaves you clear. The difference is in what remains when it's done. What breaks you also rebuilds you stronger. It sounds poetic until it happens. Until you're the one sitting in the dark, surrounded by the pieces of a life that doesn't fit anymore. Everyone loves the idea of strength, but no one talks about how it's made. It's not born from comfort or success or applause. It's forged in the kind of pain that makes you question everything. The kind that takes what you thought was solid and grinds it into dust. The kind that doesn't ask for your permission before it teaches you who you really are. That's where strength is born, not in victory, but in recovery. You think you're unbreakable, and then life proves otherwise. It takes something from you, someone, a dream, a sense of direction, and suddenly the ground you trusted is gone. You fall, you fight, you deny it. You tell yourself you're fine, but you're not. And that's the moment the rebuilding begins. Not when you pretend it doesn't hurt, but when you finally admit that it does. Because truth is the first brick in rebuilding. As long as you lie to yourself, you're building on sand. But once you face it, really face it, that's when something starts to shift. The breaking isn't a curse. It's the only way life can rearrange you. You can't build something new with old materials. You can't reach higher with the same structure that kept you trapped. The breaking tears down what's no longer working, and that hurts because we grow attached to our own cages. We decorate them, call them home, convince ourselves they're safe. But the truth is, sometimes life has to break you free, because you would never leave on your own. And when that happens, when everything falls apart, you start to see that what's breaking isn't destroying you, it's carving room for the next version of you to exist. At first, it feels like the end, like everything you've built was for nothing. But then, something strange happens. You start to breathe again, slowly, differently. The pain doesn't go away, but it starts to change shape. It becomes something else, a kind of fuel. You start to see patterns. You start to see how the things that broke you were actually making space for clarity. You realize that you had to lose the illusion of control to gain real power. And that's when you understand that strength isn't about never falling apart. It's about learning how to rebuild in the ruins without losing yourself. The rebuilding is quiet. It's not glamorous. No one claps for you when you're putting the pieces back together. People move on. They forget. But you keep going piece by piece, heartbeat by heartbeat. And that's what makes you different. That's where strength begins to take form, not in the noise, but in the silence after. Every scar, every lesson, every tear becomes part of the new foundation. It's not pretty, but it's real. You don't rebuild the same. You rebuild wiser. You rebuild with boundaries. You rebuild with eyes that see through what once fooled you. And one day, you look back at the person you were before it all broke, and you don't even recognize them. You realize they were fragile, dependent, afraid. You realize you needed to be broken to understand what wholeness even meant, because wholeness isn't perfection, it's acceptance. It's knowing what hurt you and loving yourself through it anyway. The version of you that rises after the breaking is stronger not because they avoided pain, but because they learned to use it. Pain becomes instruction, loss becomes direction, and every scar becomes proof that you survived something that once tried to end you. The rebuilding doesn't erase the pain, it redefines it. The things that once haunted you start to guide you. The memories that used to burn start to teach. You begin to understand that what felt like destruction was really construction in disguise. You were being rebuilt into someone who could hold more, see more, endure more. You stop asking, why me? And start realizing, because me. Because you were chosen to carry something heavier, to walk through something darker, to come out with wisdom others can't understand. And maybe that's what strength really is, not the ability to avoid breaking, but the courage to let it happen and still rise after. To trust that every fall is followed by a rebuilding. To know that the hands that broke you were also shaping you. That every time you thought it was over, it was actually the beginning of something truer. The breaking wasn't punishment, it was preparation. And the version of you that's being rebuilt, they're not weaker for the cracks. They're stronger because of them. When everything starts to fall apart, people panic. They run, they hide, they beg for explanations. They say things like, why is this happening to me? As if the universe owes them a polite warning before it rearranges their life. But it doesn't. It just happens. Quietly at first, then all at once. And suddenly, you realize that nothing is in your control. That's the part that really breaks people, the realization that control was an illusion all along. You thought you were steering the wheel, but the truth is, the road was deciding where you'd end up. And when that road crumbles beneath you, all your pretty plans start to look like jokes written by a child. That's when you see the truth. The fall was never your failure. It was your awakening. You see, when you're stripped of everything, when the floor is gone and there's nowhere left to stand, that's when the real version of you starts to crawl out. Not the one that smiles for pictures, not the one that pretends everything's fine, the raw one. The one that doesn't need approval anymore because the world's laughter has already burned through you. That version doesn't chase validation, it feeds on silence. It learns to breathe in the chaos, to find rhythm in the ruins. That's where you begin to understand what kind of creature you really are. Not fragile, not harmless. You were just too comfortable to notice the strength buried under all that pretending. And when the pain doesn't go away, when it lingers, when it breathes with you, that's when you realize it's not your enemy. It's your teacher. It whispers lessons that comfort never could. It shows you what matters, what doesn't, who stays, who runs. Pain cuts deep, but that's the point. It carves space for depth. You start to see how shallow you once were, how easily distracted by noise, an illusion. Pain digs until you can't ignore what's real anymore. And what's real is never pretty, never easy. It's messy, it's cold, it's honest. But it's the only place where transformation lives. People think breaking is about losing something, but it's more like shedding. The false layers peel off one by one, the fake smiles, the need to impress, the fragile ego. You lose pieces of yourself you thought were essential, and it terrifies you. But as the dust settles, you begin to see what's left. Something solid. Something that doesn't crumble when life screams in your face. You realize that maybe the breaking wasn't meant to destroy you, but to reveal you. You were never meant to stay comfortable. You were meant to evolve. And here's the irony. The thing that breaks you is also the thing that saves you. The betrayal that shattered your trust taught you to see people's true colors. The failure that humiliated you taught you humility and hunger. The loss that hollowed you out made room for something greater. You start to understand that life doesn't destroy, it refines. It's a sculptor, and you're the stone. Every hit, every crack, every fall is shaping something precise, something dangerous, something powerful. But not everyone survives the process. Some people fight it. They cling to their old selves, their comfort zones, their illusions. They scream, "This isn't fair," and they spend the rest of their lives trying to rebuild a world that's already gone. But you start to listen. You start to lean into the pain instead of resisting it. You start to see that the only way out is through. And once you stop running, once you let the storm hit you full force, you begin to feel something strange, peace. Not the gentle kind, the earned kind. The kind that comes after you've lost everything you thought mattered and realized you can still breathe without it. And in that silence, something awakens inside you. You stop being afraid of endings because you understand now that they're not really endings. They're transitions. You stop being afraid of people leaving because you realize no one truly leaves. They just return to where they belong in your story. You stop being afraid of pain because you've learned it's a doorway. Every heartbreak, every disappointment, every dark night, they all lead you somewhere if you're brave enough to keep walking. Then the world starts to test you again. The same patterns, the same traps, the same chaos. But this time, You don't flinch. You've been here before. You've already faced worse. You don't panic when doors close, because you know what closed doors really mean now. You know that behind every loss is protection. Behind every silence is guidance. You stop trying to force what's fading because you finally understand that everything that's meant to stay will fight to, and everything that's meant to go will crumble. No matter how tight you hold it. And that's when you realize maybe being broken wasn't the curse you thought it was. Maybe it was mercy. Maybe it was life's brutal way of showing you what you couldn't see any other way. Maybe the pain that tore you apart was the same hand that was trying to set you free. You can feel it in the air, can't you? That strange quiet before something breaks. The kind of silence that hums under your skin, that makes your heart beat just a little too loud. Everyone's pretending everything's fine, smiling, scrolling, laughing like nothing's wrong. But you can tell, you can feel it. Something's coming. Not the kind of tragedy that makes headlines, no. This one's personal, the kind that knocks on your door and whispers your name. The kind that doesn't destroy buildings. It destroys illusions. Comfort is the sweetest poison. It wraps around you slowly, whispering that everything's fine, that you've earned the right to rest, to stop pushing, to stop noticing. It doesn't strike like pain, does it? Seduces. You start to confuse peace with paralysis. You start calling your cage a home. Comfort tells you that progress can wait, that discipline can wait, that your dream can wait. It pats you on the back while it robs you blind, stealing your hunger, your awareness, your edge. You stop moving forward, and you call it stability. But comfort doesn't care about your peace. It cares about your control. Because the more comfortable you get, the less you fight for more. You ever notice how quiet comfort feels? It's not loud like chaos. It doesn't make noise like pain. It creeps in, one small compromise at a time. You stop waking up early. You stop pushing limits. You stop questioning things. You trade your urgency for routine, your curiosity for comfort, your fire for safety. And soon, you're sitting in a life that looks calm from the outside but feels dead on the inside. That's the tragedy of comfort. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It kills you slowly, gently, until you can't even remember what it felt like to burn. People think comfort means happiness, but that's a lie. Real happiness comes from movement, from growing, from earning, from becoming. Comfort is the counterfeit. It gives you the illusion of peace without the substance of purpose. You start telling yourself you're fine, but deep down, you know something's missing. That quiet voice in your head starts whispering again, the one you've been ignoring. It says, asterisk, you were meant for more than this. Asterisk, but you silence it with distractions. You scroll, you talk, you eat, you sleep, anything to avoid that question. Because that question threatens the very illusion that comfort built for you. You see, comfort is not safety, it's surrender. It's the moment you stop demanding more from yourself because life stopped demanding more from you. You don't realize it, but the moment things got easy, something inside you started dying. The part that was hungry, the part that fought, the part that dreamed without limits. You traded that for predictability, for the false security of I know what's coming next. But what's coming next isn't life, it's repetition. Comfort traps you in cycles, the false same job, the same people, the same thoughts. Every day feels familiar, and you call it peace. But peace without growth isn't peace. It's stagnation, dressed as serenity. The dangerous thing about comfort is how it disguises itself as self-love. You start saying things like, I deserve to rest, or I'm protecting my peace. But deep down, you know it's not about peace, it's about fear. You're afraid to fail again, afraid to start over, afraid to feel that discomfort that comes with growth. So you stay still, convincing yourself it's balance. But you can't heal in the same space that numbs you. You can't evolve while clinging to the very comfort that's keeping you small. You're not protecting your peace, you're protecting your limits. Comfort doesn't care about your dreams. It doesn't care about your purpose. It only cares that you stay exactly where you are. And it's clever, it knows how to talk to you in your own voice. It says, you're doing enough when you're not. It says, you're fine where you are when you're drowning. It says, be grateful when gratitude becomes your excuse for not changing. It makes mediocrity sound noble. It makes stagnation sound mature. It makes settling sound wise. Comfort convinces you to stop fighting and then applauds you for being content. That's the trap, the applause of your own complacency. You start to notice it when life begins to feel too quiet, not peaceful, empty. You stop feeling challenged. You stop feeling nervous. You stop feeling time's alive. Asterisk, because comfort numbs everything. Not just your pain, but your passion. You lose your hunger. You stop chasing the thrill of the unknown. You stop asking time's what if, asterisk. And when that happens, the tragedy has already begun. Because comfort doesn't just take your ambition, it takes your urgency. It makes you forget that time is moving whether you are or not. It makes you forget that the world doesn't pause for your hesitation. You see, life doesn't reward comfort. It rewards courage. And comfort is the opposite of courage. It's a slow, silent retreat from the life you were meant to live. You tell yourself, I'll move when I'm ready, but you'll never feel time's ready. That's the lie comfort tells you, that someday you'll feel brave enough to leave it. You won't. The only way to break it is to move times while you're scared, asterisk. To act times while you're uncertain, asterisk. To risk the fall just to feel alive again. That's the part most people never reach, because comfort's grip is warm, familiar, and polite. It doesn't threaten you. It just waits for you to give up the fight. And that's why comfort is the real danger. Not chaos, not tragedy, not pain. Those things at least wake you up. Comfort keeps you asleep, eyes open, heart closed, breathing, but not really living. It's the most dangerous addiction of all, because it doesn't destroy your body, it destroys your drive. It makes you believe you've made it when you've only stopped moving. And while you sit there convincing yourself you're at peace, life quietly moves past you, taking every chance you never took. With it, denial is the prettiest kind of blindness. It doesn't come with closed eyes, it comes with selective sight. You see only what keeps you calm. You look right at the cracks in your life and convince yourself they're just shadows. You tell yourself everything's fine while your walls quietly crumble. You laugh when something inside you is screaming. That's denial, a performance so convincing you start believing it yourself. You know the truth. You've felt it. But truth is heavy, and denial lets you breathe for free. So you take the easier deal. You trade awareness for comfort, and slowly, the light in you begins to dim. Denial is a quiet killer. It doesn't stab, it whispers. You're okay. It's not that bad. You can handle it. Later. And every time you repeat those lines, another piece of your awareness slips away. You stop noticing how your life is shrinking, how your fire is fading, how your days are starting to look identical. You call it stability, but it's sedation. You're not living, you're numbing. And the scariest part, the world rewards you for it. People call you calm. They call you strong. They call you patient. They don't see the cracks in your smile, the exhaustion behind your silence. You've mastered the art of holding it together while everything inside you falls apart. It's easier to live in denial than to face the truth, because the truth demands change. It demands loss. It demands confrontation. And no one wants that. Denial lets you pretend you're still in control. You tell yourself that if you ignore the storm long enough, it will pass. But storms don't pass, they build. And by the time you decide to face them, they've already learned your name. You think you're buying time, but you're only feeding the inevitable. You're feeding the tragedy before it even arrives. Because denial doesn't stop destruction, it only delays it. You can see it in people's eyes when they're living in denial. That distant look when they talk about their future like it's guaranteed. That fake laugh when they say, "I'm fine." That slight tremor when silence gets too loud. They're scared of the truth, not because it's painful, but because it demands responsibility. Once you admit the truth, you have to act on it. You can't unsee it. You can't go back to pretending. So people stay blind. They build their whole identity around not knowing. And the longer they stay in denial, the more fragile their world becomes. Because deep down, they know truth doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It waits. Denial blinds you long before destruction does. That's the trick. Tragedy doesn't start with chaos. It starts with silence. With all the little moments you saw the signs and did nothing. When your gut screamed and you laughed it off. When your instincts begged you to move and you said, "Not yet." That's how it begins. Every ignored warning is a brick in your own downfall. You think you're protecting yourself by not facing it, but you're only giving it room to grow. Denial feeds what truth could have killed early. By the time you wake up, it's already too late to prevent. All you can do is survive. And maybe that's why most people prefer the lie. Lies feel soft. Truth burns. Denial gives you a pillow. Truth gives you fire. But fire is what forges you. Fire is what makes you real. Denial only delays the inevitable pain you need to become who you're meant to be. It's funny, isn't it? The thing you run from is the very thing that would have saved you. You avoid confrontation thinking it's chaos, when really it's freedom. You avoid pain thinking it's punishment, when really it's awakening. You avoid change thinking it's danger, when really it's your evolution waiting to begin. But denial, it tricks you into thinking you're safe. It builds you a comfortable coffin. It tells you that peace means avoiding pain. It makes you live small, predictable, numb. You stop asking hard questions. You stop dreaming wild dreams. You stop fighting the slow decay of your own spirit. You live like you've got forever when time's been whispering your deadline. You think you're in control because everything looks calm. But that's the calm of a bomb before it detonates. Denial doesn't protect you from tragedy. It prepares you for it by keeping you blind until it hits. You ever notice how truth doesn't chase you? It just waits. It doesn't argue. It doesn't scream. It knows you'll come back, broken, tired, begging for what you once avoided. Because denial is exhausting. Keeping up the lie drains more energy than facing the truth ever could. And when it all finally collapses, when the job, the relationship, the illusion falls apart, that's not the tragedy. The tragedy is that you saw it coming and chose not to act. You mistook denial for hope, and hope for control. But real control isn't about pretending the storm isn't coming. It's about preparing for it while everyone else still calls the sky clear. Denial gives you temporary peace but permanent regret. It's the art of staying blind until the darkness no longer hides what's coming. You think you're safe because nothing's falling apart yet, but nothing stays still forever. The truth doesn't need your permission to arrive. It comes when it's ready, and it doesn't knock, it breaks the door. And by then, the warning signs you ignored become the debris you have to crawl through. That's what denial does. It buys you calm while it builds your collapse behind the curtain. It makes you comfortable while the clock runs out. You don't see the tragedy coming because you convinced yourself it couldn't happen to you. Tragedy doesn't come to destroy you. It comes to expose what you've been pretending to be. It peels away the layers you built to survive, the masks you glued to your face, the lies you told yourself to make it through the day. Everyone talks about how pain breaks people, but what it really does is reveal them. It shows you who you are when the act falls apart, when there's nothing left to hide behind, nothing left to impress, no audience left to applaud. That's when you meet yourself, the version that doesn't care about appearances, the one that bleeds honesty instead of words. And that version, the raw one, is the real you. Pretending is easy when life is calm. You can fake confidence, fake happiness, fake control. You can wear success like armor, hide behind smiles that don't reach your eyes, tell stories that sound better than your truth. But tragedy strips all that away. It takes your stage, it cuts the lights, and it forces you to perform without a script. You can't lie to pain. Pain doesn't believe in your act. It sees straight through you to your fear, your regret, your truth. It doesn't ask who you pretend to be. It shows you who you've always been, beneath the noise. And that's why tragedy feels so violent, not because of what it takes, but because of what it reveals. People spend their whole lives building identities made of convenience. They become what's acceptable, not what's authentic. They say the right things, chase the right dreams, fit into boxes designed by people who never understood them. They call it life, but it's a disguise. And when tragedy comes, it tears the disguise apart. Suddenly, the job title doesn't matter. The approval, the attention, the status gone. You're left standing in the ruins, facing the one thing you avoided the most, yourself. And it's terrifying at first, because truth doesn't feel comforting when it's been buried too long. It feels like exposure. It feels like being caught. You realize how much of your world was built on illusion. The people you thought would stay disappear. The things you thought mattered turn to dust. The strength you thought you had dissolves when it's tested. Tragedy doesn't just break your life, it breaks your image of yourself. It makes you question everything, who you are, what you've done, what you've believed in. But in that questioning, something real starts to breathe. Because once the pretending dies, the truth begins to live. That's the strange mercy hidden inside the pain. It takes everything false from you until only what's real remains. You start to see things differently. The people who once impressed you don't anymore. The goals that once drove you lose their shine. You stop chasing validation because tragedy teaches you what truly matters. Survival, honesty, peace. You stop caring how things look and start caring how things feel. You realize how much of your life was performative, how much of your energy was spent maintaining an image you never even liked. And now, stripped of all that, you feel something you haven't in years, clarity. The kind that burns, but purifies. The kind that doesn't flatter you, but frees you. Tragedy forces honesty out of you. You can't fake strength when you're broken. You can't fake control when everything's falling apart. It makes you speak the truth you never dared to before. It makes you admit things you buried. You say things like, "I'm not okay," and "I'm scared." And for the first time, those words don't sound weak, they sound real. Because there's power in facing yourself without disguise. There's power in saying, "This is me," even when it's messy, even when it's shattered. That's where transformation begins, not in perfection, but in exposure. You start to understand why things had to break. The pretending had gone too deep. You were too good at faking it, too addicted to your own illusion. Life had to tear it all down to save you from yourself. That's what tragedy does. It interrupts the performance. It walks right into your script and rewrites it in blood, in tears, in truth. It's not cruelty, it's correction. Because if nothing ever broke you, you'd never stop pretending. You'd stay asleep in your comfort, blind to who you could be if you just faced the truth. And when it's all stripped away, when the roles, the routines, the false smiles are gone, what's left is terrifying but pure. You start moving differently. You stop talking to fill silence. You stop chasing what doesn't feel right. You stop trying to impress ghosts. You start craving peace over attention. You stop performing and start existing. And you realize that tragedy didn't ruin you, it revealed you. It showed you the real weight of your own soul, the one you hid behind all the noise. It's ironic, isn't it? The very thing you thought would end you was the thing that finally made you real. That's why tragedy is necessary. Because without it, you'd live your whole life pretending to be happy, pretending to be fulfilled, pretending you're not terrified of being seen. But tragedy doesn't let you hide. It rips the stage away and says, "Show me who you really are." And when you finally do, you realize something powerful. The truth was never your enemy. The enemy was the version of you who believed you had to pretend just to survive. You know what's funny? People love to talk about loyalty until it costs them something. They'll scream about being real until being real means standing next to you when you're losing everything. They'll clap when you're on the stage, but they'll vanish when the lights go out. That's the thing about this world. It doesn't love loyalty. It loves convenience. It doesn't want truth. It wants comfort. And when you stop serving its comfort, when your presence starts to make people uncomfortable, that's when they turn on you. Not because you changed, but because you stopped pretending. That's when you see who's actually with you and who was just renting space in your story for the benefits. See, when life starts falling apart, people act like they don't know you. They walk past like your name never lived in their mouth. They forget the laughs, the promises, the late nights when you help them breathe again. Suddenly, you're invisible. And that's the moment you realize loyalty was never about words, it was about weather. It's easy to be loyal when the sun's shining, when everything's good, but wait until the storm hits. Wait until you're bleeding, broken, misunderstood. That's when loyalty gets tested. That's when faces start to fade, when people you swore would never leave start disappearing one by one, like ghosts leaving a burning house. Not because they hate you, but because the fire exposes what they really are. People think loyalty is a bond. It's not. It's a mirror. It reflects the truth about who someone is, not what they say. Anyone can smile with you when you're winning. Anyone can post about love and friendship when everything's easy. But loyalty, real loyalty, is quiet, inconvenient, and often lonely. It shows up in the dark when nobody's watching. It doesn't care about applause, doesn't demand recognition, doesn't expect repayment. It's not glamorous. It's gritty. It's uncomfortable. It means standing beside someone when standing beside them could ruin your reputation. It means keeping their name safe even when yours is being dragged through mud. That's the kind of loyalty that scares people because it demands courage, not comfort. You'll learn that betrayal doesn't always come from enemies. It comes from the ones who said, "I'd never." The ones who swore they'd stay. The ones who smiled the widest when you were up and watched silently when you started to fall. They don't stab you in the back, they drain you slowly, with silence, with absence, with excuses dressed as reasons. They'll tell themselves they didn't mean to hurt you, but loyalty isn't about intentions, it's about choices. They chose not to show up, they chose to look away. And that's the truth most people can't handle. Because if they admitted that, they'd have to face how fragile their own loyalty really is. But here's the strange part, betrayal. It teaches you better than loyalty ever could. You start seeing patterns. You start noticing energy instead of words. You stop believing in promises and start watching behavior. You start realizing how expensive loyalty is and how few people can afford it. You begin to understand that not everyone who walks with you is walking times for times you. Some just walk beside you because the path is smooth. And the moment it gets rough, they vanish, pretending it was always meant to end that way. That's the nature of people. They'll rewrite the story to make themselves look loyal, even when they were the first to run. You can't beg people to stay loyal. You can't convince them to see your worth when their eyes are blind by comfort. Loyalty can't be taught. It can only be proven. And once you realize that, you stop expecting it from everyone. You stop giving all of yourself to people who give you fractions. You stop explaining your pain to people who were never planning to understand. You stop chasing ghosts and start guarding your energy. Because you learn that loyalty isn't about how many stand with you, it's about who's still there when everyone else walks away. It's ironic, isn't it? The same people who once said, "I'll never leave," are the first to close the door behind them. But don't hate them. They're teachers. They showed you who not to trust. They showed you how to love without dependency, how to stand without support. They stripped you of illusion. They made you stronger, colder, wiser. They taught you to trust silence more than promises. And in a way, you should thank them because without betrayal, you'd still be surrounded by masks. You'd still be mistaking proximity for loyalty. You'd still be giving your heart to actors. Loyalty now, it looks different. It's not about grand gestures. It's about small consistencies. It's the person who checks in when you disappear. The one who defends you when you're not in the room. The one who doesn't need an audience to care. Those are the rare ones. The quiet ones. The ones who love without needing credit. You'll know them because they make you feel safe, not indebted. They remind you that loyalty isn't about blood or history, it's about spirit, about who stands with you when there's nothing left to gain. And once you find that, once you experience real loyalty, you stop settling for anything less. That's what the world doesn't tell you. Loyalty will cost you. It'll demand honesty, patience, and strength. It'll hurt because most won't match it. You'll give it freely and get silence in return. You'll protect people who wouldn't even text back. You'll bleed for people who wouldn't even stay. But that's the beauty in it. You'll learn that loyalty says more about you times than them. It's a reflection of your soul, not their response. Because even when they fail, you don't. Even when they walk away, you remain true. And that, right there, is what separates the ones who pretend from the ones who are real. You ever notice how the room starts to feel smaller before you're pushed out of it? How the laughter gets quieter, The smiles get thinner. The air gets heavy, like it's trying to tell you something. You start sensing it before it happens. The shift, the sideways glances, the fake concern. It's not paranoia, no. It's recognition. You've outgrown the room, and they can feel it before you do. You think you're still one of them, but the truth is, you've already become something else. And people don't like what they can't control. They'll call you arrogant for evolving, ungrateful for wanting more, disloyal for refusing to shrink. But deep down, they know the truth. Your presence exposes their comfort, and your growth threatens their stillness. You see, people love you when you're predictable, when you stay in your place, when your dreams are small enough to make them feel tall. But the moment you start breaking patterns, the moment you start talking different, thinking different, asterisk, moving times different, suddenly you're the problem. Suddenly you've changed. But that's what growth does, doesn't it? It disturbs people who've built their peace around your limitations. They'll start whispering. They'll start turning the room cold. They'll start pushing you toward the door, not because they hate you, but because you no longer fit the version of you that they were comfortable with. You were never supposed to stay. You were supposed to outgrow it. You'll notice it's always the people who never dared to leave who'll tell you to stay. The ones who gave up on their own fire will tell you yours is too much. They'll call your vision unrealistic because theirs never made it off the ground. They'll mock your passion because it reminds them of what they lost. They'll call you crazy because you make them question their sanity. That's the game people project their own surrender onto anyone brave enough to keep going. And when that doesn't work, they'll isolate you. They'll try to make you believe you're the one who's wrong. That's how the world keeps dreamers small. It convinces them that solitude means they've failed, when in truth, it's just the birth of separation between who you were and who you're becoming. Sometimes the universe will use rejection as a way of removing you before you get comfortable. It will make people turn on you just so you'll finally move. It will dry up the well so you stop drinking poison. It'll take away applause so you learn how to clap for yourself. You think being pushed out is punishment, but it's protection. It's alignment disguised as loss, because you would have never left on your own. You were too loyal to the wrong room, too afraid to walk into the unknown. So the universe shakes the floor beneath you, breaks the bonds you clung to, and forces you to stand alone until you realize you never needed a crowd to validate your purpose. The rooms you outgrow will always talk about you like you were the problem. They'll twist the story, make it sound like you lost your way, when all you did was stop walking in circles. They'll laugh behind your back because it's easier than admitting they miss your light. But don't fight to stay where you're no longer respected. Don't beg for understanding from those committed to misunderstanding you. You owe no one an explanation for your evolution. You don't have to dim your energy to keep anyone comfortable. You're not meant to shrink to fit back into what you've already outgrown. You're meant to step out, even when the door closes behind you. You'll notice something strange happens when you finally leave. The noise stops. The chaos fades. The air gets lighter. You start breathing again, and you realize the heaviness wasn't life, it was them. The doubt, the gossip, the quiet envy that filled the air. You were suffocating in a place that couldn't hold your expansion. The silence that follows your exit isn't loneliness, it's freedom. It's the space your next chapter needs, because you can't step into what's coming if you're still clutching what's gone. The ones who pushed you out did you a favor. They removed you from the cage you mistook for comfort. And you should thank them, silently, because if they hadn't closed that door, you might have never found the key to your next one. You'll see that the world works in patterns. Every time you rise, something will try to hold you down. Every time you expand, something will shrink away. Don't chase after what's leaving. Don't apologize for your transformation. The people who are meant for your next level will meet you there, not drag you back. The rooms you lose aren't your punishment. They're proof of your progression. The ones who stay small will call you lost, but you'll know the truth. You're finally found. Because the moment you're pushed out of what you've outgrown, that's when you begin to see what was waiting outside all along. It's easy to confuse rejection with abandonment, but look closer. Rejection is the universe clearing your path. It's removing distractions disguised as friends, comfort disguised as purpose. It's redirecting you to something that matches the size of your spirit. You were never meant to fit in. You were meant to break the frame. And every time you do, the world shakes. That's why they fear you. That's why they push you out. Because deep down, they know you're leaving.